Today we'll start off the discussion. Today's the topic of discussion is how we can use SQL type syntaxes within the SAS code window. Now SQL has been over the years a very powerful tool for data handling in the Oracle databases, and SAS actually can connect directly to Oracle databases in a server domain, and we can write SQL type syntaxes within the SAS code window. Now while we do that, whenever we write SQL type syntaxes within the SAS code window, we must always start off the proc SQL to let SAS know that the codes which follow are like SQL codes, SQL type codes. Now the normal SQL type syntax like a create table and those kind of things work in this environment also. So the basic structure is something like this: create table, data name, as select. If I want to select some variables from a particular data, I write v1, v2, v3 separated by commas. If I select all the variables, I write star. From a particular source data. So from a source data, if I want to include some conditions, I can directly here include some conditions. And finally, proc SQL ends with a quit rather than a run statement. So this is the basic structure of a proc SQL syntax. Now suppose we want everything from sashelp.class to be included in a data, in a particular data set. So if I write So I'm creating a table in the work library called C as select. If I write as select star from sashelp.class, so I get everything from sashelp.class into this particular data. So I get everything from sashelp.class into this data. Now if you wanted to select some variables, so suppose I want to select some variables like the variables out here is a name, age and sex as new variables in the new data. So suppose I want to select name, age and sex, these three columns into my data. So I tell him now this we could have achieved through SAS also by a statement called the keep statement. So if I had written data d and set sashelp dot class and keep name, age and sex, though outcome wise they are similar, they are going to give me these three variables out of the 5 variables in class into a new data. But if you look at the original structure of the data, it's name, sex, age, height, weight. Now in spite of I mentioning the order as name, age, sex and not name, sex, age through SAS, but if I do it through SAS, I will be getting the structure of the original data irrespective of the order in which I mention the variables. But if I call it through SQL and I give the order as name, age and sex, what I'll get is the structure in which I mention, the order in which I mention. So this is a good way of swapping columns in your data, or from a large database if you want certain columns to be placed side by side which may be quite differently placed in the database. You one generally uses proc SQL to call or pull the data from the database. Not only that, we can use conditions here also. We can use conditions here also in a sense that if I want to do this but only for the females, so I have this. If I want to do this only for the females, I can do this by including a condition at this stage, and we could achieve this. So this is in a way can give me the selected observation, selected variables, but in the order which I want it to take place. Okay, so by this way ProcSQL is very widely used to pull data from databases by applying different conditions. Okay, and the selected variables can be very easily obtained in terms of the order which I want it to happen. Now for other purposes for which ProcSQL can be used is one another important aspect is the grouping. So grouping of data is very similar to what we do in SAS through proc summary or something. So for example, I want from sasl.class, I want the average age, height and weight to be stored as a in a new data sex wise average age, height and weight to be stored as a new data in the database. Okay, so how we do it through SAS is something like this: proc summary data is equal to sasl.class, and I look at the mean, and I sex is my class variable, and I create mean of age, I call it as avg underscore age. Mean of weight, I call it as avg underscore weight. Mean of height, I call it equal to avg underscore ht, and run. So I do this. I need to remove the total row by this nv missing option, and what I get is this: sex wise the frequencies I get, apart from that the averages stored as a new database. Now this we could have achieved through SQL also, and by something called, now if I write proc SQL create table, say s as select sex, which is my variable by which I'm going to group. I want the frequencies, right? So I count any variable, I count name as frequency, and I need these also, the averages. The naming convention in SPSS or in SQL is through as, not like equal to in SAS, and the variables are separated by commas. Unlike in SAS, then I need not give those commas. So very similar kind of syntax, and as this, and the trick is done by the group by comments. If I say group by sex, I get this done. From sasl.class. So I get this S data, which is very similar to my T data. So I get to see the frequencies, the average age, height, weight as the data. So this group by command in proc SQL helps me to generate the this group by command helps me to generate the group level summary statistics using proc SQL. I can use sum, count, mean, and these kind of attributes to save them. Now another important aspect SQL provides us is the distinct count. It's very important to get, sometimes to get the distinct count of a particular variable. Now an example can be, suppose I have a transaction data where a customer is transacting throughout the month, and there are several such customers who are transacting throughout the month, and each transaction is recorded as a new row in the data. But if I want to get to see how many customers actually transacted in the date in a month, for that I need to get the unique count of that customer. Okay, so suppose I have data like this. So I have a data like this where I have certain employees and their monthly salary files are there, but suppose I want to know how many employees are there in this file. Okay, so I want to see how many employees are there in the file. Now to get this data into SAS, suppose I get this data into SAS, I import the data. Is saved in the work library only by the name of F, suppose. So this data is imported. Now I want to know how many employees are there in a particular has been there. So if I just do a count, I will get 1200, because but that's not the correct one, right? I need to know how many distinct employees are there. So for that, the distinct count comes into play. Distinct count of a variable called employee ID from a data called F and quit. So I get to see there are, sorry, got it the other way around, sorry, the count of distinct employee IDs. So so I get to see the count of distinct employee IDs, and I get to see that there are 100 employee IDs in this particular file. Since I had not given it any particular name, it has taken a very odd name for it. So if I wanted the name also as per my choice, I could have given it here as, say, whatever, count or something. So I get to see there are 100 employee IDs. Now if you look at the data, I have a variable like month. Okay, so if I want to see how many employees were got paid in each of the months, then what I needed to do was add one more column to my data, which is the month. Okay, so an example can be that, see, I have data across months for my customers, and I want to see how many customers transacted in each of the months. Okay, another very interesting aspect for this count distinct is in to understand the frequencies. For example, say I'm in a retail environment and I want to know how many times my customers have purchased. Okay, so here's again the daily transaction data are there in the database. I need to do a distinct count of the day of purchase, so that will give me how many times or how many number of times he visited in a particular month or a particular period. Okay, now coming back to this, now if you want to know that in each month how many customers transacted or how many customers got paid, then apart from this count I also needed to have, sorry, the month variable here. Okay, so the month variable along with this had to be there, and the only job now left is I need to group by the month variable, right? If I group back by the month variable, I will get to see the month wise distribution. Here incidentally I have all the employees got paid in each of the months, hence I'm getting this value 100, 100, 100. If my data was not like that, if my data was not like that in some, and some of the employees didn't have a salary in some of the months, so then probably I would have got a different results. didn't delete them. What happened? I didn't save the deleted version. See, in some of the months now, since I have deleted some of those employees in a month, so I get, say, in month 2 19 employees got the salary, in month 5 99, month 7 98, and so on and so forth. So this count distinct again is a very powerful tool within proc SQL, which helps us to solve a lot of purpose in terms of the getting those frequencies or number of unique customers and stuff like that. Okay, now in fact this grouping and this can also be used for some other purpose also. For example, suppose um, say I have a data in SAS called air. Okay, now so there is a date which is combination of year and stuff like that, and there's a variable called air which is the international airline travels in thousands of miles. Now I want an activity to be done which is, suppose if this particular value is greater than the corresponding yearly average, I call it as high, else low. Okay, so this can be very efficiently done in SQL. So but prior to that I need to have that column in place which is the year. Okay, so data, so I'm saving the year of the date variable as a new column in my data. So I get this year as a new column in my data. Now to get the summary statistics in the same data, um, create a new data. I could have overwritten the original data, but suppose for the sake of doing, I'm this, and I group by year. So why not year? So I get to see um, D1. So I get to see what does log tells me. It says that remerging summary specific back to original data. That's what we wanted. I wanted the in the original data only the summary statistics. So now for each year I have the corresponding yearly averages automatically generated and saved. See, this has saved me one step. I need not see, if I had done it through SAS, I had first to create the data with the summary statistics, and then I needed to merge it back with the original data. So this actually had saved me one step, and I could very easily merge the the summary statistics back into the original data by just a simple group by statement. I need not had to merge, first create the summary statistic file and then merge it back to the original data. Now my job is very simple. If this is higher than this, it's high. else low. So that can be very easily done in one step. So data so I can format this column. Dollar sign to symbolize it's a string variable, and I format this. So, and I can format this avg also, giving me so many places after decimal. Format this to 10 place of decimal. So I get to see if the value, which is the variable called air, which is the internet airline travels in thousands of miles, if this value is more than the average for that particular year, it's high, else it's low. And now we can see in which months it is high and which months it is low and stuff like that, and that we can analyze separately. So here through SQL we actually did a quite an efficient job in at this level, basically, where we could easily merge back the summary statistics into the data without actually going through the process of creating a separate summary statistic file and then merging it back to the data. So these are the basic usage of proc SQL, and something on the merging on proc SQL we had discussed in the earlier session. Okay, so this basically concludes our session on the basics of proc SQL. But there are other features of SQL also which can be used in SAS, which requires a more extensive discussion. So we'll actually stop here today, the basics of proc SQL. But people who are more efficient in SQL, they can actually go and check the net, and probably they will find there are other tools or other codes of SQL also which can be very readily be accepted within the SAS code window. Okay. So with this we stop our session. Anybody has any questions, then we can take it.